by those small businesses.
Opposed.
This is a subject very near and dear to my heart. At my core, from a professional standpoint, I'm a business person. I've owned and operated my own business in the North Side. I've worked for 2 Fortune 500 companies and many different small businesses. So I've seen up close and personal, from a personal perspective, how small business works. And I know something like this would really have a devastating effect on small businesses. So I would be opposed very much to that. One point that I did want to make, I visited with a small business person. It's a 3rd generation business on Spring Garden Avenue. And I think a very, very vital role of somebody in government, particularly in state government, is to be able to sit down with small business people, because that's where all the jobs are, sustainable jobs are being created nowadays. Small businesses create those jobs, not big, large companies. So having tons of experience with small business, I think, is vital. It's something that I bring to the table. But back to the gentleman who business on Spring Garden Avenue, he lamented that many, many times he'd have, whether it was city, federal, or state representatives come in, government people come in, representatives, elected officials come in, that had no clue, zero idea about what it takes to run a small business. I've owned a small business, I've run a small business, I've worked in many small businesses. So again, it's subject near and dear to my heart, and one of my 5-point plan that I have articulated out on my website, and you'll see certainly in what you have seen in my literature. So a no, an emphatic no to the levy of taxes on these services.
You're right. Okay. For the same question, I forgot to mention in my introduction that I was a Ross Township Commissioner for 20 years, from 1978 to 1998. Ross is a large 15 square mile community, and I can tell you that when I took office in 1978, our millage rate was 9.5 mils, and when I left office in 1998, it was 9.25 mils. Did we raise taxes at times? Yes, when it was absolutely necessary, but when it wasn't necessary, we would turn around, the next year, and we would reduce taxes. But I can tell you that as your state legislature, I would not even consider any new taxes until this state begins to clean up its waste. And let me give you an example. If you follow Jack Wagner, if you don't, go to his website, read the audits. Tim can probably tell you about this. There's $1 billion in waste that you'll find in his audits on that website. $1 billion. And that's not all the waste. For example, last year, Governor Ed Rendell let $4 billion worth of uncompeting bids. $4 billion. I wouldn't even consider these new taxes. And what would happen is we put the 24 new taxes on, and he lowers it to 4%. You can rest assured that in a few years, they'll be jacked up to 5 and 6%. There's no way I would consider this.
Okay, we'll switch over to Representative Whitby.
Well, let me first say the question itself is a valid one. It's one that, because we are dealing with a financial situation in this Commonwealth, and quite frankly, we have a $1.1 billion hole. We have transportation needs that are arising somewhere close to $3 billion. That's just to maintain our current infrastructure, mass transit, not even dealing with new infrastructure. The fact that we have a pension spike that we all know hit in 2011 and stayed high for several years, and then which will impact all of us, even if you're not a state employee, because local districts, school districts have to contribute to that spike. The fact of the matter is we cannot cut our way out of this situation. It's going to have to be a combination of smart investments, strategic cuts, and new revenue streams. talk about severance taxes. We can talk about smokeless tobacco. We can talk about closing the Delaware loophole. We can talk about making more cuts. By the way, last year we cut almost $2 billion out of our state budget. So the reality of this situation is we have to get very, very serious around what the new role of government will be. When you talk about economic development projects, when you talk about support of educational systems, when you talk about basic services. I heard someone mention about the auditing that talked about the Department of Public Welfare. The reality of the Department of Public Welfare is 1/3 of the citizens, which are our elderly citizens, require 2/3 of the cost. So if you're going to talk about reducing Department of Welfare, you have to talk about reducing services to elderly. So I think everything is on the table. I'm not avoiding the question. I'm just saying that is not even on the table right now as a serious proposition. But we have to be serious about the options.
I would oppose any further taxation until we actually get our house in order. I believe that it's far too much wasteful spending. And normally when we make cuts, the cuts usually affect the very people who could least afford it. So we can talk about cuts, we can trim the budget down as much as we want, but it usually hurts the very people that can least afford to be hurt. I believe that if we knock off some of the wasteful spending that we do in Harrisburg, someone mentioned earlier that the state legislature is far too big. I agree. We should eliminate some of these state legislatures that we do have. They're out of touch with their constituents. They don't even understand what's going on with the people that they're supposed to represent. Every time they spend your money, wastefully spend your money, misuse your money, steal your money, what do? They propose a new tax. It's almost like they come up to you and say, hey, look over there. And while you're looking over there, they got their hands in your pocket. Enough of this wasteful spending. We should start right there. Remember last year when we were 101 days delayed with the budget? That cost us $837,000 is what the taxpayer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania paid because we were 101 days over in passing the budget. It's stuff like that that's unbelievable. It's almost ridiculous. And who does it hurt? Again, the people who can least afford it are the ones that are most affected.